This is a presentation of First United Methodist Church Child and Adult Ministries Protection Guidelines. And for those of you who are watching through the video, we hope that you'll use have one of the guidelines with you as you go through this and be able to follow. If you don't have one, I'd strongly advise that you stop at the church office and pick one up and have one for your own purposes and reference. So, as the current chairman of the Staff Parish Relations Committee, I want to welcome you and thank you as volunteers, and we don't have employees here, but these volunteers who are serving our children and our adults within our church. Without you, we couldn't do the work of this church and provide the several services the church is able to offer. So again, thank you for attending and watching the presentation and getting up to date on our guidelines of our own. Now, along with the services you provide comes the added responsibility related to child protection and adult ministries protection. So we'll be reviewing those guidelines in just a moment. First, let's have a word of prayer. Our dear Lord in heaven, we are in your house to learn and understand what we need to do in order to protect your children. And that would include both youth and adults. We ask that you bless us as we learn about the process needed to help those who serve, and that you be with us as we go about the duty of serving you. Amen. Okay. As an introduction, the Child Protection Guidelines and the Adult Ministries Protection Guidelines have a lot of similarities. So it'll be easy to handle, and I'll be handling them together. But where there are some differences, why I'll note those for you so that you can have them. But no, generally they're about the same guidelines. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. If later you are looking over stuff or you have questions and aren't able to get hold of me, feel free to talk to Pastor Tony or really even members of our own staff parish or John Van Vactor, who would be an excellent person to contact. Also, our guidelines reflect Indiana Code, but if there is a difference between our guidelines and Indiana Code, for any reason, Indiana Code will take preference. At the end of the presentation, it will be necessary for you to complete Appendix D in there, at least I think it's Appendix D, which is the verification that you've either attended the face-to-face meeting, completed the online study, or gone through the self-study. And once you sign it, it's to be given to me or to the church secretary. And it also needs to be known that this is training every year. We go through this every year. Now, under the topic of guidelines and procedures. All persons who work or volunteer must go through a screening process. And that process, I think, is Appendix A. And I'll refer to it so you can, I won't go to it, refer to it anymore, but I'll let you review it at a later time because they're not necessary for this presentation. I'll note that any person that's been convicted or sexual or physical abuse, convicted of sexual or physical abuse of children or youth, or those who have a history of inappropriate conduct with children will not be employed and shall not volunteer service in any church-sponsored activity or program for minors. Also, this is true for someone working or volunteering in the adult ministries, insofar as having been convicted of a felony of abuse, neglect, or exploitation of an endangered adult, or those who have a history of inappropriate conduct. So we try to be very good about checking that and making sure that we don't have any questions or concerns. And as one of you asked earlier, there is a background check that we do run. So from that aspect we do, and we also would presume that if we had great concerns, we would take the safer route and not hire. Adult survivors or children, childhood sexual or physical abuse need and will receive the love and acceptance of our church. Employees and volunteers, now you should observe a two-person rule or the open door policy. And this would be for both categories. The two-person rule requires that employees and volunteers and supervisors shall make every reasonable effort to avoid a situation where the employee or volunteer worker is alone with children, youth, or adult without a partner. If you stop and think about that, that's pretty critical. You don't want to be placed in a situation where you are with someone alone and somebody makes an accusation, because now it's your word against theirs and you don't know where that's going to go. The open door policy requires that the door be open at all times or that persons have immediate and easy access to the room. So if you are meeting with someone, you need to make sure that a door is open, or if you're teaching in a classroom, a door should be open or should be easily accessible to open. So you need to be careful about that as well.
Or even with the windows?
Again, if the doors were closed in this room, for example, that would be all right, because you can see through easily.
As long as they weren't locked.
As long as they weren't locked. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
At the last minute, if someone becomes ill or can't go to take communion to someone in their home, do you recommend that we not go that day, or can one person?
I obviously that's going to be a call that you need to decide. But if you know the individual well, you know,
Probably okay.
if you've got someone, you go, I'm not sure today how they are versus tomorrow how they are, and maybe that's a good time to delay or call someone else to go with you.
But there might be circumstances where one person could go at the last minute.
I would say this says no, but reality says yes. That's
Okay.
probably right. Yeah.
And you don't know what the family might do either.
That's right. You don't know. So it becomes a judgment call on your part. For me, if I knew someone well and we've had a good relationship together, I probably wouldn't worry about that. In the same way with the family, I don't think I would worry about it. But at the same time, if I had someone who is having difficulties and they're switching back and forth from good moods to bad moods, or I'm not sure what's going on today, or various activities that they may be going through or concerns, maybe I would say, I better just wait for somebody else. So. For children now, you have to have written permission from parents when a church-sponsored activity begins at the church and moves to another location. The written permission needs to note how and by whom, by whom that the child's being transported. So you need to have something documented that parents know where you're going and they're given okay. For those working with the adult ministries, you are not to solicit or receive monetary or property gifts or gratuities from any person they are serving. Okay, because oftentimes they will say, and I've been in that situation before, they said, they want to give you something because they're so appreciative of you. They want to give you a little something. They had a little knick-knack or something. And under this role, we shouldn't be doing that because there's always that possibility that they forgot. And then they're going, where is that? I mean, that's an example. But we don't want you accepting any monetary or any type of gratuities. Let's see. If a person being served by adult ministry program wishes to make a donation to the church, they should be encouraged to make it with a check made payable to First United Methodist Church. So it should be made to the church. And any donation received by an employee or volunteer shall immediately turn it into the church secretary to be receipted into the church records. Then the church secretary will prepare an acknowledgement of the donation by letter to the giver upon receipt of the donation, along with the information of the donor. If a cash donation is received, then I really suggest 2 volunteers need to see that exchange and initial a giving envelope. Both people initial the amount that was put in there. And list the amount on the outside of the envelope. The donation should also be listed on a volunteer activity report for the day. And yes, in yours, there's a volunteer activity report. that you should prepare and give to the church office.
Every time?
Yes, well, if you accumulate some and then turn them in, that's fine. The question that comes, if I don't do it every time and all at once something happens and this time I didn't document, then I'm setting myself up for a problem. And it's only there to try and protect you in a situation that could come up. So it's a safety issue, is what I see it anyway.
I don't see the,
I understand that.
Is it,
With that, in a group setting, then each person that's there needs to be listed on here
I would,
every time we meet.
I would.
is that are you here for joy breaks?
Have,
18 people, well, you have a
well,
list, I guess, I have
you
a
know what,
list, you
if
could check
if
them
it's
off.
joy breaks, that type of thing, you've got that number of people. I think the fact that there are two of you signing, at least saying that we had joy breaks, this is what went on today, 18 people were there. I would think that would probably be acceptable instead of listing all the people, unless for some reason you want to list them.
So
But
that would
it's
probably
just more the idea that you are documenting that you were there and what took place.
So that would mean wow in every meeting?
WOW is not necessarily it can be a senior adult.
Old
Methodist
people.
men, we got a bunch of old guys.
Yeah.
show up.
Yeah,
I would say, though, those are good questions. That's a good question. I guess I would say if you make some kind of a notation that you had a meeting, maybe that's enough.
But the notation, the office has the notation that the meeting's taking place.
Yeah.
It's in the it's
Yeah,
noted in the bulletin and
That's
in
true.
the,
That's
and
true.
in the
I think
calendar.
the intent of this is when you are looking at an individual or like we're doing now when you're doing visitations. I think that was the intent of this, not necessarily the larger group.
I did
I
the child protection policies for Boy Scouts,
Mm-hmm.
and it was, this would only apply when you're meeting with a scout individually.
Yeah,
For
I think that was
Americash
the
or something.
intent.
But
The
you wouldn't
intent of
count the
this.
regular meeting,
That makes sense. to me.
because one person would not have the opportunity to take advantage of this, not unless the whole group did.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
I think, and that's the intent of the adult protection policies. I had a member of when I was at a church, I had somebody went to a person who had named the church in the will, went to their house, and they were not legally responsible, and got them to change their will.
Yeah.
And that's what you're trying to protect against.
Yeah. I think
Or take advantage of them.
that was a great question. I think he's right, and I believe that was the intent of this, is when you're meeting individuals or a very small group, that then you record. I think when there's a group meeting, like you were talking about, I don't think that that's necessary. I don't see that as necessary.
But when we take communion,
Yeah, we would do.
Yes.
Yeah, that would apply, because
Yes,
there's
because
two
you're talking
people.
about one or two people
Yeah,
or
I
a
could see
small group.
communion, but
Yeah.
okay.
Mhm.
do you have a box I can put these in when I show up on Sunday morning?
Yes, when you have so many.
No,
You
no,
could-
if we had a box downstairs, when I come to worship, I just put it in the box that I went that week. That would save, if there's a box downstairs,
Or give it to me and I'll make sure it's
Yeah.
the right place.
that you're
I
not
see
here,
you.
you're
well-
not here all the time. You can
Well.
visit your grandkids.
That's true, and that'll continue.
Yeah, so, if there was a box, a thing, you just put them in.
Have to give it some thought, think about
Yeah.
that. Okay,
well, it seems to me that it only has the date at the top, and then it has all these times to put their name and what you're doing. It seems like we ought to have a form that is just for one time. Like date, and the volunteer, and what they did.
Yeah, so when we went for communion,
Right.
we'd fill this
I
out.
would,
Right, but we don't need this whole 2 sheets of paper.
Well,
No,
when
no.
you take it out to the nursing home and you see 6 people,
Mhm.
you'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Oh, I have to
Yes.
put them each,
You'd have each person listed, so we,
okay,
Brenda, don't you do that as a group?
Mhm.
Aren't they all in the
Mhm.
same room?
they're all together. So,
I would-
but still
I would
you
list-
want them
those I
listed
would list.
individually.
Yeah, those I would
Okay.
list.
but you could put,
And-
but it also, the way it's listed, you could put 2 here.
You could modify that, I think, any way
Okay.
that you need to do it
But,
for your.
so I
for
could
your
turn this in
use,
every
so.
6 months, and I think you need to decide how you want to keep the record of it.
Do you
It'll-
want it
it'll be kept in a
each-
file in here.
Each month, each time we go, or accumulate
Preferably according to what the guidelines are.
each time?
Each time.
Mhm.
Now, you want the people that aren't members of our church that come also,
Yes,
okay?
I would think that would
Everybody
be
that
especially
comes.
important.
yes.
Okay,
'Cause you
Well,
could-
and as we go further here and start looking at things to look for in terms of possible abuse, neglect, then that will key into that form, I think. I mean, to let you know that that person was there,
sure.
and this is the report I'm giving. So it helps give you some verifiable information, so. Okay,
And you could get accused of being cross-related.
and here's a bit of advice I would give you, because we were talking about the money. If you're handling money, whether it's check or cash, in my mind's eye, I think you need to be very sensitive to the implications. Be sure to give the church secretary the amount donated, and it is reflected in your report. Okay? Be sure it's in there. And what you give her, of course, is the same amount, of course. But the additional thing is, for my own sake, I would ask the secretary to give me a receipt that she received that. I mean, you may have to give a receipt to the individual who donated, of course, but can you get a copy of it because you gave her the money? And you want to make sure she can say, yes, that's the amount of money I got. And then I would keep it from our own records or connect it to that, so when it's put in the files, you can always go back and refer to it if you need it. And if you don't get that kind of thing, I try to have her sign your activity report saying this is the amount of money that received, okay? It's just too easy, especially when there's cash, to get something happening, and so I just thought you should be a little careful that way. All right, here's some signs for children. This would be kind of I think it's your appendix B for the children's side, signs of abuse. And I'll go through those fairly quick. And these are, the first section are physical signs of molestation. They may include lacerations and bruises, irritation, pain, or injury to the genital area. They may have difficulty with urination, discomfort when sitting, maybe torn or bloody underclothing. They may have venereal disease. Behavioral signs that you may see under molestation can include nightmares, anxiety when approaching the church building or nursery, of course beyond normal separation anxiety, nervous or hostile behavior towards adults, sexual consciousness or acting out of sexual behavior, and withdrawn from church activities and friends. Now there's some verbal signs that may include these kind of statements. I don't like such and such. Such and such does things to me when we're alone. I don't like to be alone with such and such, or such and such fooled around with me. So being very sensitive to that type of thing. For the adults, yours is Appendix B, I think.
Mhm.
Signs of self-neglect would include and may include behavioral signs, which would include crying, depression, despair, sleep disturbance, confusion, detached, withdrawn, disorientation, change in appetite. Environmental signs may be hoarding, no food, no water, no heat, animal infestations, insect infestations, outdated prescriptions, unlabeled prescription bottles, empty prescription bottles. So that, and I'm sure many other things that you can see that would put a flag up for you to say, wait a minute, something's not right. Some physical signs could include dehydration, malnutrition, poor health, poor hygiene, dirty nails, dirty skin, bed sores, skin rashes, soiled clothing, soiled bandages, matted hair, lice-infected hair, non-compliance with medications, and same way with non-compliance with recommended medical tests, non-compliance recommended medical treatments, dress isn't weather appropriate, presence of feces or urine on the body or clothing, absence of needed assistive devices. Those are all possible physical signs that you might see in our elderlies. Here's response procedures, and I think this is Appendix C, I think, to yours. The response procedures, for the most part, are the same for the child protection guidelines as they are for the adult ministry guidelines. Know that the official spokesperson, okay, the official spokesperson at First United Methodist Church is the pastor, or in the absence of the pastor, the designated spokesperson. And usually in these kind of cases, it'd be probably the SPR chair, the Staff Parish Relations Chair. All inquiries or requests for information from the media, attorneys, or any other parties will be referred to the official spokesperson. No person other than the official spokesperson is to release any information regarding any alleged incident or abuse without the express approval of the official spokesperson. This is your ability to say, by policy, I cannot talk to you. You need to talk to Pastor Tony or whoever that person is. I would be very careful about talking to your friends, because your friends will say things to their friends and start opening up a door that causes a floodgate. And you may have people knocking on your door wanting information when you just saw something and thought, I better report it. Then all at once you become the spotlight. So just refer everything to the church here.
Does that comply with state law?
Does not have to comply with state law. That becomes procedure under this. Now,
Because state
Now,
law
if-
says,
if-
state law says if somebody sees something, you're required to tell the police.
well, now we'll get to that.
Okay.
Because if you do see something, you are mandated to report it. Okay? This response procedure is before talking about reporting procedure, only because we want you to know that after you've made that report, you need to be extremely careful of who you talk to. Yes, will you have to talk to the police? Absolutely. Will you have to talk to the welfare department? Absolutely. But does the media come and say, you need to talk to us? You need the
No, but my point is, it's
ability.
not sufficient to tell Tony, you also are
That's
required
coming.
by state law to go tell the police.
That's coming. That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
But
so
response
that's not
wise,
the end of the matter.
right. Response wise, after you've done that, then everything needs to go through Tony. Okay?
Or if the police call you.
If the police call you, you do have to talk to them.
You have to talk to
I
them.
understand that. That's
Okay.
understandable. But we're trying to be very careful about others, especially trying to come. The official spokesperson shall immediately report any alleged incident of abuse to the appropriate local agency, Child Protection Service or police of the county, or insurance carrier, the conference chancellor, and the Methodist Church superintendent. Now, coming later, I'm going to talk about that a little bit differently, but you need to know that that spokesperson will call the welfare department as well as you. Okay, the care and safety of the victim is our first priority. Will not confront the accused without the approval of the Child Protection Service or law enforcement authorities, because they take over. Will not prejudice any person accused, but will take any allegation of child or adult abuse seriously, and will reach out in Christian love and support to the victim and the victim's family, extending whatever pastoral care resources are needed. We will fully cooperate with any authorities investigating an allegation of abuse. We'll treat the accused with dignity and respect. If the accused is a church worker, that person will be temporarily relieved of his or her duties until the investigation is finished and the person's been cleared by the authorities. All communication by the official spokesperson to the media, congregation, and public will protect the privacy and confidentiality of all involved. All efforts in responding to the alleged incident of abuse will be documented by the pastor or, in the absence of the pastor, by the previously designated spokesperson and maintained in a secure, confidential file. All right, now let's go to reporting. This is right where you were talking. This is pretty much Appendix B, I believe. Indiana Code requires a person to immediately, I'll say it again, requires a person to immediately report suspected abuse to the authorities. And at First United Methodist Church, the appropriate individual in charge, that is the pastor. In the event the abuse is a result of a pastor, the individual in charge shall report to the staff parish relations chairperson. Okay? Now that said right there, Indiana Code says you got to report it right away. It's a matter of practicality, unless it's an emergency. I would make sure, for me now, and I'm saying this on video, for me, I'd probably tell Pastor Tony first that this took place, and then I'd report it. So give the pastor a heads up, or whichever pastor that is, or whoever that will be, gives them a heads up that all at once she's going to have friends coming to see her. So, but you are required to do that. The individual in charge, in the case of child abuse, a person who fails to report can be prosecuted for a Class B misdemeanor, or in extreme circumstances may be subject to civil liability for money damages. So they're pretty serious about that. Therefore, all employees and volunteers at First United Methodist Church must adhere to these following procedures. In the event of a suspected, reported, or discovered child or adult violation of the Child and Adult Protection Guidelines of our church, the employee or volunteer shall immediately notify the pastor, or in the absence of the pastor, a person designated by the pastor and approved by the church council. Okay? Go there first, and then you are obligated to make that contact to the appropriate individuals. Now, if it's an emergency, you know what you got to do. You got to make the report first, and then go to the pastor or the designated person. In the event of suspected, reported, or discovered abuse or neglect, an employee or volunteer will also immediately make the report to the local Child Protection Services or Adult Protection Services or law enforcement agency. So when you make the call, they'll want to interview you and get information down, or talk to you on the phone and write information down. Reports shall be documented in writing with the date of the report, time of the report, the telephone number to which the report was made, the name of the recipient of the report, and a brief synopsis of the report. That's what you need to do. If you have to make a call, start documenting. When you make the call, you want to know the date, the time you called, who you talked with. Not just a police officer or the welfare department, Officer Day or whoever it is. You want to get their name down. And then after if you can, take notes while you're talking to them on the phone. And when it's done, write it out. Get your detail down now because it's fresh. And you may forget something. Okay, and or you may be held accountable for that later. So you can say, this is what I said. And so we're trying to protect you by doing that.
And I would assume if you've called the police, that then they can give you the number of adult protective services. We don't need to.
And they actually probably come out themselves, but
Or they
yes.
might report it to them.
Mm-hmm,
Okay.
mm-hmm. But whatever you talk to them, write it down. Get it down on paper so that you have it. Because who knows? It could be several days go by. It could be immediate. You don't know, especially for the adults. Children, you hope that it's fairly quick. You hope. If at all possible, all oral reporting will be done in the presence of recorded witness. Well, it probably may not get done. Further, when a written copy is made, I recommend asking for a copy to be presented to the pastor. In other words, if you're sitting down with a police officer or somebody's filling out forms, ask them if you could have a copy. 2 reasons. First, so they can get it in the office, and secondly, you have a copy for your own purpose. Okay? If it can't be shared afterwards, rewrite the report so it can be given to the pastor. Also, make your own personal copy. Okay? Just try and be very careful, because when you start getting into muddy waters, you just don't know how things will turn, how it might happen, might turn one way or the other. And you want to try and give the right information as you saw it and be consistent with it. And that's the other thing. Consistency is extremely important for you. So be sure and take the time to write it. It's serious. For those who are working with the adult ministries, Appendix B has additional information concerning who is an adult. We did that. But pretty much that's the presentation. What questions do you have or comments? We're just trying to make sure that we get reporting done properly, that we're observing, and we're taking appropriate steps when needed for those individuals. That's okay.
I'm wondering how, the response is to this training. Do most people actually do this, the people that are giving leadership?
In our church, yes.
So this is not necessarily.
No, there have been a number of people that have been here in past years, and all they have to do at that point is either see the video or get the latest copy and review it. But then they need to sign the form that they got it. So, yeah, you aren't the only one. There'll be, and we'll follow up, make sure we know who's seen it or not seen it. And I'm willing to try to accommodate any way I can to assist them. I had
I
one.
think last year I just signed it and put it under the office door.
Did you? Did you?
But after I,
Yeah, after you reviewed it. Yeah, if you take it home and all, but the form is important, so we have it that shows that you were in the training. So
what do you need besides tonight, besides these two?
that's all
Just
I
needs
need.
that.
Yep.
It just
Just
needs
need-
this.
This is the child.
She gets
Okay.
to sign too.
Oh, she
Yeah,
was
that's right. Yeah. And then we put those on file. Okay.
Okay, good.
So you'll follow up with the people that are doing communion. I bet you don't even have a list of who's doing
No,
communion.
not unless
I'll
Tony,
get you one.
not unless Tony has. Oh, okay.
You know, I'm not real sure they have one in the office.
Yeah, we should
Probably
get a
should.
list. Okay. All right, I'm going to get up and turn the video off, then we can continue.
Do we have to make out this one?
No, I think he just wanted